antiquated within the near future. We will not be carrying around these rigid screens. They'll become bendable, flexible, stretchable. We'll be wearing them, they'll be integrated, and pretty soon they'll be done away with entirely. We'll have virtual reality or augmented reality. We'll have gesture control and touch, tap and swipe. It's not going to go away overnight, but it will be replaced minority, report style with verbal interaction, conversational commerce, which is of course why chatbots are emerging now as a favored method of interacting with things. So it'll be your car, your smart home, your smart office, embeddable wearable devices. We'll be conversing with these machines in a very seamless way once AI has been improved, refined, and after all, we're not that far away from the singularity. Some say the singularity is due in just over 10 years, 2030. Tim is shaking his head. We have this conversation. Tim doesn't really know that much about the subject because he's a PhD in AI and linguistics. Actually, he kind of does. But we have this thing about the Turing test, and I just feel that there have been times where I have been sort of tricked into thinking that I'm speaking to a human. Okay, not indefinitely. It was pretty soon you realize, this is not a human, it's a chatbot I'm interacting with. But for that sort of brief moment in time, did it pass the Turing test or didn't it? Now, Tim is absolutely explicit. No, we've not reached the point where artificial intelligence is capable of fooling a human being into believing they're conversing with a machine as opposed to a person. But I just feel we're closer to that stage of development than a lot of people think. So it's very, very exciting and very interesting times. So chatbots, like I said, flavor of the month, all the rage. Everyone's talking about chatbots. Who in the room is involved with chatbots internally in terms of your organization? You're thinking maybe this is something we need to integrate into our kind of business process or customer services. So how many? Who's the guy from Skyscanner, by the way? That's you, Stefan. We haven't actually met. Great. So you're third on, yeah? All set? You've got your deck, your computer? Brilliant. Fantastic. So Gihan, you're from Converse AI.
Yep.
And I'm going to hand over to you to introduce yourself in a little bit more depth. And you can get cracking with your presentation. You've got everything you need now. You've got the Flickr. You've got your laptop.
Yeah,
perfect. Over to you.
So,
okay, round of applause. Gihan from Converse AI.
So I'm Gihan and I'm from Converse AI. So what Converse AI does is pretty much a chatbot building platform where people doesn't need to actually use code and sit down and write rigorous amount of NLP code and process linkages and all these things. Where what we have is we have this concept of chat flow where you, rather than program your chatbot or communication, you actually model your conversation where your user and your bot needs to have, and between that you can integrate your services like if you want to send some data to Salesforce or something like that, so you can link up modules throughout the conversation, same way as a human being who's gathering the data would type on the Salesforce account, so the bot would do that for you. So we are playing around with the concept called chat flow, where bots are just not for chat purposes, but they actually can run day-to-day businesses and actually use them as employees to help your current employees or to have a more stand. So to start off with, so this idea of chatbots is not a new idea, to be honest. It has been there from IRC days, if people have been using them. So, and also automated answer based on text is not a new idea. So, but why there's this huge chatbot explosion? So I think one of the main points is that more and more people are to use messaging as their main communication method. So people like texting rather than picking up the phone and talking to somebody or emailing or anything like this. Just purely text-based communication has gone up with the new millennium. And another thing is, so more and more businesses which are out there are moving to social media. So Like these days you can't find a single company which doesn't have a Facebook page or have a Twitter account which actually communicate to their users. So which brings a total new paradigm of how are we going to keep track of amount of information that people are trying to talk to us or have a conversation with us. Because if you have a Facebook page, somebody would need to chat to you on the Facebook. So you're not going to you can't sustain by putting huge amount of human power onto that, because any given day, maximum a human would be able to talk would be 2 or 3 simultaneous conversations, and threading is something that computers have solved about 20 odd years ago. So you can simply run multiple conversations over and over again. And so the other aspect is these days you can actually have anything as a service. I mean, when was the last time somebody hosted their own email server or even wrote their own CRM rather than using Salesforce? So if there's so much of open APIs that people can integrate. So, and that has given this idea of, okay, so we can actually automate things. So where chatbots came was, okay, so the automation part came up and there were APIs, but now people wanted the more natural way of communication with these APIs rather than just trying to adapt them as separate programs. And other thing which I always like to talk about is, so if you pick your smartphone now, how many mobile applications that you currently have? Like, so with the concept like IoT, where you can manage your fridge, manage your house, and manage your heating system, you are not going to have a app for each specific component of your household. So most probably you would want to, I don't know, text to the house and say, please put the heating on, and it'll sort the rest of the things out, rather than click on the house app and then go and select the heating app, whatever, based on the heating provider, and then say, well, okay, let's put the heating up again. And most importantly, the NLP and AI technologies have moved a lot ahead, rather than days of regular expressions and matching strings together to map NLP. So that has had a huge effect on this explosion of chatbots. So where does the role of NLP actually comes into play? So obviously NLP is the core of chatbots, because what you want people to interact is with natural language. So that's the whole reason of people are moving to text. There are so much is on using emojis, so like abbreviations and everything, rather than just going and clicking on buttons. So NLP plays a huge role. I'm not going to dive into what is the best technology of NLP out there, because there's a half a dozen APIs that you can just take out, and there's so much of research papers has been done if you want to implement your own NLP thing. But exactly when it comes to chatbots, there's few things that we need to consider when either using or adopting NLP technology. So the main thing is emphasis on sentiment. So the current, I wouldn't say current NLP is not 100% there. Well, not even, I don't think even 50% there. So one of the, I think you can beep this if you want to, but one of the explicit examples that we got from our customers was, so somebody was typing, this is the shit. So, and also there's a huge difference, somebody typing this is shit and this is the shit when it comes to actual sentiment. A normal human being would be able to pick that up, but majority of the NLP code out there would always flag that as a bad impression. On when somebody says this is the shit, it'll say this is a bad impression of your product. And currently, I can tell you any NLP system currently would flag that out as a bad usage of your user experience. So there's a lot of work that needs to be there, but I'm sure the technologies would come there at some point. And the other thing is ongoing training. So when you're building a chatbot, so one of the main components of NLP is actually you need to train it, and people need to understand what is the intent, what is the context that is being linked up with. So you need to make sure that you have an NLP system where when you're, and the worst case of this matter is that you would actually get to know what people are asking when the bot is actually live running in your system. So you need to catch the failures and train your NLP system without actually putting the bot down. So you don't want to give a bad experience to users that say, so okay, bot is down for training. That's a bad adaptation of bots. And again, most of the current NLP systems are missing this as well, the actual chat abbreviation. So when was the last time somebody said yes rather than giving a thumbs up for a yes no question? So most of the NLP system, if you send a thumbs up as an emoji, it'll break that says I can't pass this. So those kind of consideration needs to be taken off, because you are actually trying to link up a bot to an existing messaging platform rather than asking users to change their behavior to use the bot. I think me and Tim had a very good discussion one day about this idea, because people are already used to using SMS, they're already used to using Facebook Messenger or Layer or whatever, 100 different messaging platforms. So people need to be able to link, NLP system should be able to understand this is what people are talking about when they're using actual abbreviations of the language. And one of the most important things, again, context-aware NLP. So for example, if somebody says orange in your chat, so orange can be a fruit if your chatbot is handling a fruit market, and orange can be a color if it's a textile retail shop, and again, orange can be a drink if it's a, I don't know, something like Fanta or something like that. So based on the context, the word orange would have different meanings. So a human being can understand based on the context what they're talking about. So the same idea needs to be adapted to any NLP technology that you are using if you want to give a proper experience for the user base. And most importantly, just because you have the perfect NLP system, it would not produce a useful bot. Because NLP is just, like I said, as the heart, it will understand what you're talking about. But most important thing is what you're going to do with the data that you actually understood and how you're going to use them. So what are the things that, there are a few things that we need to consider beyond NLP if you're doing chatbots. So the first thing is user experience and users' perception on using chatbots. The same way Simon said. So would people need to know, your user base need to know whether this is handled by a bot or whether this is handled by a human? Does it actually matter? So when we had our first customer, so we did all this system with bells and whistles, very fast, and answers get bot answers in split milliseconds and things like that. So the first requirement from our customer was, could you please put some delay onto the answers? So regardless how many, so their first requirement was, I want a delay when the bot answers to match actual human answer. So that actually shows, okay, the technology is good, but that is totally do with the user's perception of how they are using the service. And again, going back to the point of people are so used to using their different chat messages and chat systems. So whatever the bots that you develop need to incorporate with your, incorporate whatever the messaging platforms your customer base is already using. So that's a good thing of using bots and automated systems, because you can just link up with, I don't know, Messenger API, Slack API, Twilio APIs for SMS and all those purposes. You can link them up nicely and it'll work. And if you want to make your life easy, you need to find a way that you can actually train a single bot to talk to different channels. It's almost like putting model view controller approach onto bot communication. So if somebody comes with Facebook, so they can just use the Facebook approach, but your training data and your NLP model and everything is a single bot. So but based on where they're coming from, the perception would differ. And use of rich media. So again, this comes back to, again, for the user's experience. So people like to send text, but they rarely like to read huge amount of information which is being sent to them. So they would like to see pictures. If you're sending a bunch of on a retail shop, if you're somebody shopping and asks for, can I get some t-shirts? So rather than sending them, okay, go to this link, go to this link, go to this link, you can actually I don't know if anybody has used Facebook Messenger API, so you can actually send through Facebook. You can actually give them proper carousels that they can actually browse on the chat rather than sending them explicit link where they can click on. So again, goes back to, yeah, so the NLP, so chatbots are based on text, but again, you need to, when you're considering about the user experience, if your incoming messages or incoming data stream allows rich media approaches where if somebody wants to say, well, yes or no, so rather than asking them to type yes or no, you can actually give 2 buttons, please click yes or no. It's on the same chat box, which has more user adaptation than just asking them to type all the time. And I guess the other thing is linking up with your existing services. So there's no point of having a chatbot just to have communication and gather the data, and you want somebody else to browse through the data which was gathered and actually put them onto a different system to process. So if you want to employ or use a chatbot as part of your core platform or part of your core communication, you need to exactly do what information. So if you are adding a sales lead onto Salesforce, and if you are putting a chatbot in front to replicate whatever your first line support or second line support or sales guys were doing, that chatbot needs to interact exactly the same way that the human was interacting with your core system, so that you don't have huge differentiation of the data, and the adaptation within the company would be much easier. And human and bots working on the same conversation. So this is something that many of our current customers use. So people who use intercom, I don't know whether you guys know about intercom. So they put intercom in front of their website to gather basic information and chats and things, so chat to customers. And majority of them, the current usages that you have seen, is they actually put a bot to handle majority of the questions, while the same communication can be seen by every single staff member who's on the same team. So they're actually using the bot as a staff member, and if a bot fails to answer, then somebody jumps in and answer. As far as the user is concerned, they are actually getting a direct flow of information without having a different change between, oh, this is a bot and bot failed, and this is a human, and what's the difference? So which comes to the most important point. You need to handle when the bot failing. So end of the day, they are computers, and rather than saying computer says no, there should be a different mechanism that you have put when your bot actually fails, and to run with the current communication of the user. So it could be simple as, it can be a failure of the system, it can be failure of NLP parsing, or it can be failure of given bad data. It can be so many things, because end of the day, we are talking about language processing, which is from different user to user, how they use semantics, how they use grammars, how they use actual speaking or spellings, and everything is totally different. So rather than bot says no, there should be a way that gradually either you put it to a human or put it to a nice way of handling those errors. So which brings to this diagram, which actually think how a bot should be adapted when they're using. So things that need to know. So the first thing, so you need to think about how your current employees going to behave with the bot. End of the day, somebody needs to train the bot to do some sort of a work. So it could be expert knowledge that current one of the staff members have. It could be somebody. And if you're using, I mean, these days most of the companies use, anybody use Slack as internal communication? So everybody uses Slack as internal communication. So you can't actually put a bot platform or a bot into a system and say, now please go to a different system to figure out where the bot has gone wrong. So if people are using chat for internal communication, the bot should be using chat for actually pushing messages out that says, okay, I can't sort out this, somebody can look it out as well, which ironically most of the few of our customers currently do as well. And again, talking about the automations and user experience, which is exactly the same thing. So you need to make sure that your different users or based on your user base, based on how they come from, you actually give a proper user experience for them. So if somebody is coming from Facebook and chatting to you, asking about some details, given, again, going back to the rich media angle, given that you can actually do rich media, there's no point of actually asking him to either type 1 to 10, a number between 1 to 10, a number between 1 to 2. But again, if somebody is coming from SMS, you can't do that angle. So you need to actually ask them for an actual textual input. So based on how they are interacting with your bot, you need to be flexible enough so that you can actually push the correct experience onto the user. And the main thing, it's almost like, so how much do you trust your bot to run your business, which is the most important and most painful thing for pretty much every guy who's adopting a bot. So to what certain extent that you would trust your bot. So would you trust your bot to do, I don't know, multi-million sale, or would you trust your bot to handle requests from your biggest customer? So those kind of things. Again, end of the day, this is where the automation things would come into play. So if you actually consider a bot as a, I don't know, intern or a base employee. So if you don't trust your intern to handle your biggest customer as soon as they start, then most probably giving the bot to handle your biggest customer might not be the best solution there as well. So it's all to try to link up your current way of doing businesses with this whole idea of, okay, there's this other guy who sits in some channel and just answer questions randomly. So this is sort of a example use case. One of our customers came to us. So it's like, so the customer calls customer support and says, oh, my X service is not working. And the support guy checks the thing and say, oh, you haven't paid your bill. So it gets transferred onto accounts or billing department. And accounts stuff gets sorted and then comes back. Customer says, I'm paying way too much, so I need to change my plan. So then obviously a customer support guy is not going to handle that. He's going to just push it to one of the salesperson or account managers or whatever. So this is kind of like, I don't know if you're buying internet service or anything like that, would be a base sort of a customer experience example. So how would you adopt such a use case? Because that is actual tangible use case where customers would see there's actual business benefit to automating these kind of procedures. So there's two schools of thinking on this one. So one, you build this big bot who knows everything and link up to every single service which is out there, training and everything. And then you actually build multiple bots, small, just are specifically required to do specific tasks. So they are actually trained on X amount of the business and they'll understand the NLP and the language behind that part. Goes on like, so both have their benefits and drawbacks. So like if you put single purpose bots, again, like I said, so if you say, well, there's Steve bot, then everybody knows what Steve bot do. So it says, okay, it asks for customer details, puts them up, checks everything up, and try to answer as much as FAQs it can. If it can't, then it'll offload to whatever the department it needs to handle. And again, easy to train. So most probably Steve can train Steve bot because he knows what customers actually asking most of the time, what answers he give. So the training would be straightforward. And again, you would in your head you can actually model it nicely because you would see, well, this is what normal use case of Steve. So let's try to model what Steve does in a more conversational manner. And again, smoother bot human hybrid model again goes back to the part that says what happens when bot can't answer. So there should be, rather than telling, okay, there'll be human escalation if the bot fails, what you actually need is expert escalation when the bot fails. Because if your bot has already failed to answer a customer, you don't want to just pass it to somebody else, which says, oh, I don't know, I need to pass it to somebody else. And this guy says, I don't know, I need to pass to somebody else. So in a normal customer support scenario, you wouldn't do that in the first place. So why would you do that if you are adopting a bot to handle the base customer interaction. And again, if you just start with one, if the bot doesn't work, you can just say, throw off bot, we'll just go back to the same way that we were doing things, which doesn't actually affect anything, because what you have done is you have just put another member of a staff to handle the same process that you guys were handling, and define clear boundaries. And again, if you have multiple bots, just one big thing to manage, and one place of interaction. User experience won't vary from each bot to bot, because normally what we have seen is bots, even though this is not intentional, bots tend to adapt like the language, communication, even though this is all computational, nothing is majorly running with neural networks or anything like that. When different people training the bot, it almost becomes like it takes part of the same way that people interact, like the language that the bot uses and everything will become a bit different. So if Steve trains Steve bot and Brenda trains the sales bot, the language and the way that they would communicate and the questions being asked would be totally different, because it's two different people who are actually putting in the training data and says this is way how it should behave. And if you use one big bot, so it's just pretty much one single place of doing the languages. So again, so this all goes, so regardless which approach that you take, end of the day, these are computers running computational code on top of that. So the first thing is NLP has come a huge way from, I think for the last decade, it has done a lot of work, but it is nowhere 100% perfect. It is nowhere, the current NLP, obviously this is going to change, another amount of research going on, is nowhere near have capabilities where the human would understand the natural language and how the NLP algorithms would understand the natural language. So that needs to be considered. So there's no, most of the time, the same way with humans, it's good to say, I don't know, and back off rather than giving a wrong answer. So most of the bots fails when it comes to NLP things, because they try to answer and not give a valid answer rather than say, I don't know, I'll just ask somebody else to sort out this. And again, so when people build bots, so they have this perception that says telling to their customers or telling to anybody that this is actually backed by some of humans, if it breaks, is a bad idea. But in my head, it is a good idea, because at the end of the day, you know that if the bot fails, your user is guaranteed to have the same experience that he would have been having, rather than waiting for another or bot to pick up or somebody to restart the conversation. So the other thing is you need to model how the conversation would flow in your head. Like so this is what user is going to input, and these are my trigger words. This is how the user would going to link up, and these are the actual data that we want. So one of the mistakes that people would do is if you want the input, say as color, there's no problem of asking, could you please enter a color and ask for the color, because that gives easier on the user that says, okay, I need to input a color, and it is much easier on the NLP system as well. You can just say to the NLP, just could you please check for a color or some other parameters that will go near with the color, rather than this total random thing that says you input anything and we'll try to figure it out. So it's again going back to the user experience, and also this also goes back to the NLP system as well. So if you have a flow of conversation, so going to a flight search thing. So if somebody says, I want a flight, that's fine. So your current intent triggering and whatever the algorithms that you can hook up can say, okay, so this guy needs a flight. So obviously, since it's typing, people would just keep on typing, says from, say, So most probably your next question from the bot would be, where do you want to type? But by the time that bot is trying to send where do you want to type, user could have actually typed from London to Paris, something like that. So if you actually ask the question again from the user, that is a very bad user experience, because that shows that either nobody was looking at what user was typing. So when considering linking up your conversational flow, you should be able to grab, or you should grab as much as information from the user's current interaction or past interaction, rather than asking questions over and over again for the same set of data. There's a lot of systems these days. You can actually link up user preferences. If you already know the user, if you know his preferences, why ask the question from the bot? Because you wouldn't be asking the question from a human. You would ask, do you want me to book the same thing that you have booked 3 or 4 times? So same sort of ideas, regardless if they use NLP or not, needs to be linked up with how the conversation would flow. And handling small talk, so things like, hello, how are you? So there should be actual some sort of way need to be thought of, even though that is not your bot's behavior. There should be way of handling people saying, oh, how are you? Thank you. You're welcome. Those kind of small talk behavior, because that's, again, a more natural experience of users using NLP technologies. And this is my most important thing. So end of the day, bot is a training or a knowledge base or a brain. So if you put garbage, what you get is garbage. So your output would be clear as your input can be. So if you train bot with amount of garbage information of Wikipedia to sell, to sell shoes, if you train your bot to think about cars, then obviously you can't sell shoes, because the only training that you have given was cars. So just throwing huge amount of text at an NLP system or your bot would not make it be any smarter or be any useful. So how do you start? So I would say, again, with programming, do your hello world. Just write a simple, pick a bot platform, or if you want to code your own thing, find a bot library which can link up with things, and then write a simple hello world. Then actually choose a problem that you know that you can model, and then that you want to solve, and that in your head this is how the conversation goes through, this is how it has been happening, and you have previous experience of how it's going through. And then again, find a good NLP base. If you want to write your own, you can knock yourself out as well. And again, so like we did with the web technologies these days, where you actually see, when you come to a site, there's so much of analytics on your websites these days. You exactly know where this user gets stuck, what part users actually don't go to, what other things. So it needs to be, when you're modeling the conversation, you need to use the same approach as well. So you need to find out, so at which state that on this conversation this actually fails every time. So why do we need this? Why at which part of the conversation this is get passed to, escalated to humans over and over again? So find them, and again, it could be, there are simple things that you can do, like, add those data onto your training model so that it picks up next time, or change the questions or the behavior, how it's going to interact. And again, if you want this to be adapted by internal as well as external, it needs to hook into your current system. Just by telling, oh, we have a bot, it's out there and there's this huge amount of data which is coming, but your current staff still needs to browse through all this communication now, which is much harder now, because it is actually going through text and then copy and paste to other systems. Nobody would be wanting to adopt that sort of a technology out there. So I think that's it for me. I said questions are not here.
What we're going to do is, what I like to do is keep questions to the end and do like a panel style Q&A with the 3 speakers and myself at the front, and then we can open it up to the room. So if you have any burning questions, either tweet them or save them to the end. By the way, the hashtag is IOT EDI. Internet of Things Edinburgh. So please tweet liberally and find us on Facebook and Twitter, www.iotedinburgh.com. Now, what I normally do, and I forgot to do, is open forum, which is just to really open the floor to anyone in the room to share any news you have. If you're looking for collaborators for an IoT-related project, co-founders, you're looking for a developer maybe, you're looking to hire, you're working for a tech company, you're looking to hire someone, then now, or you're organizing an event, right? Which Ray is, then now is your chance, the open forum. So does anyone apart from Ray have anything to share with the room? Daniel.
Cheating slightly because I've got a spot in a second. You mentioned looking to hire, advising a company which is looking to hire front-end web developers. So if someone fits that and is looking for a job, grab me afterwards. I'll put you in touch with them.
Front-end web developers?
JavaScript, React.js. If these.
But sort of like, kind of back-end rather than sort of front-end. I mean, not sort of looking for CRM, like a WordPress or something like that. You need someone who can actually use scripting languages, someone who's technical as opposed to creative.
Yeah, a technical.
Okay, a technical person sounds good. All right, Ray, the floor is yours.
Just a reminder about IoT Scotland, which is on the 29th of September. We've got over 200 bookings now. So we are getting close to capacity. We will overbook it slightly.
It's a great venue, right?
Amazing venue, Dynamic Earth. Pre-event attrition and on-the-day attrition means we'll overbook it. So if you do want a day focused on IoT and its actual application into business in Scotland and further afield, please do sign up at iotscotland.com. We've got Boeing coming to speak about how they're going through a process of automation.
Uber.
Catapult IoT, Uber, First Group. A raft of experts and commentators. So it's
Did the Glovedy guys say yes, or are they coming along? Glovedy, the Glovedy guys.
Well, he said yes in principle.
Okay.
But I think he's very keen to come up.
They're a very early stage technology startup with some very cool.
Just as a side note, if you are tweeting out about the previous discussion, be careful because I just auto-corrected chatbots into chat boys and tweeted it out.
Oops. That's a whole different niche audience there.
Thank you, Simon.
So which prediction text keyboard are you using, by the way?
Chatbots turns into chat boys.
Okay, well what you need is, actually our sponsor for this evening is Flexpansion. Now Flexpansion, I would say is one of the better, not allowed to say the best because I think that I'm biased. Tim is a very good old friend of mine and he is the founder of Flexpansion, which is an artificial intelligence powered word prediction keyboard, very similar to SwiftKey. Any of you guys heard of SwiftKey? Sold for $250 million to Microsoft. And I use SwiftKey, I use Swipe, I use Flexpansion, I use the Google keyboard. I use them very regularly, and I like to compare. And I'd say, in terms of UX and functionality, I think the Google keyboard is the nicest on both iPhone and the Nexus 6 that I'm using at the moment. But in terms of the actual word prediction, quite genuinely, I think Flexpansion is the best that I've used, and that is quite a grand claim, and it's genuinely true. And I'm not just saying that because Tim's in the room. Has anyone heard of Flexpansion before? No? How many downloads have you had?
About 70,000 on word of mouth.
And what's your 5-star?
4.7 for the program.
Okay, that's pretty darn good. 4.7 out of 5. Now, I'd say that is one of Edinburgh's best kept secrets, quite honestly. And the fact that a Cambridge startup doing something very similar that was acquired recently by Microsoft for $250 million, doing something very similar to what Tim's done, is like I said, I think there's a little gem that needs to be shared with the world. So I think Tim needs to work on his marketing a little bit, but the technology is sound. So thank you so much, Tim, for your ongoing support. Right, I think we are going to go on to our next speaker. Are you ready, Daniel? Winterstein from Sodash.
Sodash, yes.
And let's get you plugged in. So you got your, you using your Chromebook, or you're going to go play it safe and go for the?
This.
Uh-huh.
Would you ready for the previous talk?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Thank you so much. Gihan, where are you? Excellent talk. Thank you, thank you. And we're going to keep the theme with chatbots because they're going to take over the world. So make friends with them. Okay.
Okay.
But I mean, quite seriously, you know, there are some leading luminaries, including Elon Musk, who feels that artificial intelligence represents the same level of threat to humanity as nuclear weapons.
Does he not also believe that we're living in the Matrix?
The evidence is pretty compelling. Look into it in your own time. I think they're doing some research into it at CERN, and they're looking at a subatomic. It's not my area of expertise, I might add, but if they find that kind of wobble, that would suggest that we are living in a hologram. So, what Schrodinger's cat? Quantum theory. Oh, yeah. I don't know. I've watched the first one. I was like, didn't get into it. Are we good to go?
We're good to go.
Excellent. Round of applause, Daniel.
Nice. Thank you, Simon. This talk is called Why I'm Giving This Talk and Not a Bot. Let's start with me. My name is Daniel Winterstein, and I came to Edinburgh in 1999 to study artificial intelligence, and I've especially focused in natural language processing. It's a good city, it's a good subject. I've not regretted either of those decisions. I'm still here. The CTO at Winterwell. We're a machine learning consultancy, and the main thing we do is we make a we make a product called Sodash, which is a social media platform, and it's used by companies like Harrods and Selfridges and several travel companies to manage customer support over the social media channels. We have a new product which is for SMEs, and this is a robot intern, which we call SoGrow. And SoGrow is for people who know they should do more on social media, but they don't have the time to do it. And I will be demoing that later. But first, let's talk some more about bots. So I tried getting a bot to do this talk. Let's see if we can do that again. This may be a little unfair on Cortana. Hello, Cortana. Can you help me with the talk? Maybe the microphone's not working. Hello, Cortana. Okay, that was right. That was unfair without the website. When I tried it earlier, though, Cortana's default response was to send me for a search for the phrase talk. So that is why you have me here tonight. But if we ask for a second, what if that worked? If bots are successful, they do work that would otherwise need humans to do, and ultimately that is going to mean less jobs for humans. So someday, a robot is going to fire you. At least when it does that, you'll presumably be able to get your P45 at the same time. The data entry, the paperwork is going to be seamless. It's a bureaucratic dream. Grown men will weep at the joined up multi-channel communication that will go on around this. But there's no getting around. If bots are successful, they are going to change employment and how society works. There's been studies by very sober people. Like I think the Bank of England did one where they were predicting about a 30% reduction in human workforce over 30 years.
And a lot of people find this scary, which is very understandable. But it's kind of another way to look at it is it's a bit of a sad reflection if life without hard or menial work scares us. And instead, let's try and imagine that the other thing these bots are going to do is they are going to make productivity go up. And if productivity goes up, there's more wealth being created. Society as a whole is wealthier. The question is, what happens to that wealth? Will we use it to make a better society where we are all better off and able to lead lives more focused on what's valuable to us? Or will we go down other more dystopian routes? And I think that choice is in our hands. It's something, I'm not going to dwell on this talk beyond saying, I think that whilst we are working on bots and pushing forward these technology barriers, we should also be thinking about what that means for society. And one particular solution that might work is to introduce a citizen's wage, which is this idea that instead of valuing people for their productivity as workers, we value them just for being people, and everyone gets a basic income which allows you to live a normal and happy life. And I will now get off my soapbox and move on to the meat of this talk. From this, people that have this concern of, will I be replaced by a robot? When will I be replaced by a robot? And why isn't my robot clone ready yet? Because bots are hard. And let's talk briefly about some of the ways that bots go wrong. I'm grouping the cardinal sins of bots into three: insincerity, poor etiquette, and being useless. And these sins are not inherent to bots. Pushy salespeople and customer service who can't really help you, these are not new inventions. These have been around for a long time. Bots are actually potentially part of the solution to that. But what bots do let you do is they allow companies to be insincere, annoying, and useless at scale. And one of the problems is automation is hard because when we do a task as human beings, we bring with it to even the simplest of tasks, like saying hello and talking about the weather, we bring a wealth of knowledge and understanding that bots just don't have at the moment. Picking on Microsoft again, did anyone follow the Tay Tweets bot that was released a while back by Microsoft? It was modeled on being a teenage girl, and it would learn from people talking to it on the internet. And well, the internet is an interesting place, and it very rapidly turned into a neo-Nazi bot. It went from, in the space of 24 hours, when it was switched on, its first tweet was to say how much it loved human beings, and within 24 hours it was tweeting neo-Nazi stuff and saying it hated everyone. They switched it off, deloused it, put it back on again, and the internet, second time round, turned it into a junkie who talked about hash. So these are hard problems, learning the skills of navigating conversations. And to pick another example, to go back to Cortana, I was using Cortana the other day trying to get some balloons for a party. The conversation went a bit like this, said, oh, we can't use it, the internet's not working here. Hey Cortana, search for helium balloons. Cortana replied, here is a definition for the word search. Me. Search for helium balloons. Cortana, opened a browser search for the blues. Maybe my accent. Me, thank you, Cortana. At this point, Cortana crashed. These are hard tasks. Cortana may not be the best bot out there, but these are very hard tasks that it's wrestling with. So that's the first thing, that it's easy to build a bot which overreaches itself. It tries to be human, it tries to do everything, and it fails. And when it fails, this is the point Gihan was making earlier, we have to build for failure when we're building bots, so that this is part of what we're delivering is a good experience. The next sin is insincerity, that it's surprisingly easy using digital channels to write these scripts which are just too pushy, and well, they annoy your customers. And unfortunately, if you're looking at metrics, you will not really see the annoyance. You will see the people who clicked through, but not the people who were turned off and now think less of your brand. Classic example of this is the automatic direct message on Twitter, when you follow someone and they auto DM you back with something saying, "Great to connect with you! Why don't you like my Facebook page too?" And everyone knows this is a bot, and basically the read rate on these is very low. That channel has been degraded as a result of too many bots. Also, you'll probably get a lot of email spam these days, where here's a couple of examples from my inbox today. These are subject lines. Daniel, open this email for 12 people you should meet. Smiley face. Spam. Another one. Making great customer experiences. Spam. They're pretending to be my friend. This is insincere. They are a sales thing. They're pretending that we're having a conversation when they're cold calling me. This is insincere. It's spam, and it deserves to go in the spam bin. There is nothing wrong with sales. There is nothing wrong with sales bots, but they should present themselves honestly. If a bot should not try to be your friend, unless that is in fact its purpose. It is a friendly bot and you have installed it for specifically that point. So I think the key to sincerity is very simple. It's be honest and open. That's my insight. Sincerity this is not a technological problem. It is a design problem. And just ask yourself, when you're creating bots, how would you feel as a recipient? If the person knew that it was a bot and what the bot's purpose was, would they still feel the same way about the conversation? And imagine that this wasn't digital, that you were talking to someone in an equivalent setting. Would you behave this way? And if the answers are yes, and often they are, then this is a sincere bot. It is doing a purpose. It is trying to help people, which can include selling your product. And if the answers are no, then rethink, because this bot is breaking some social etiquette rules. Speaking of social etiquette, this is, probably, does everyone recognize Clippy? Yes. The first virtual assistant, perhaps, and probably the one that set back the market in the field for years. I think Clippy's sin was that he was intrusive. He didn't have a sense of etiquette. He jumped into conversations without being invited. And so it varies a lot between channels. So there are certain things which are, there's spaces in Twitter where talking to strangers and jumping into conversations is acceptable, and there's spaces where it isn't. And then on other channels, it really isn't. So it's understanding the dynamics of the conversations that you're having and knowing when it's appropriate, when it's not. Okay, having talked a bit about the problems of bots, let's talk a bit about some of the solutions. for etiquette and sincerity, it's about how we use, as companies, we use bots. It's not a technical problem. It's a problem about taking care of your customers. Being useless, though, that is a technical problem, and it has a variety of solutions. I think that brings us to why don't you use automation more? Simon did a survey at the beginning. I think maybe 2 people put up their hands for using bots in their company. And why are we not all using them to handle our drudge work? Quick survey, who here has menial tasks that come into their inbox and their email?
Just email and story.
Okay.
It's exasperating.
And yet, most of us are not using automation to solve that. Why is that? Well, it's partly the fear that the bots will do more harm than good. It's partly the quality, about whether we can get a bot to deliver sufficient quality for us. And it's partly the time and the cost around deploying a system, which can be very substantial. So that leads to 3 broad approaches to building better bots. And one, quite nicely, I think they align with the 3 speakers we have tonight. One is around tools for bot building. I think that's where Converse AI are working. One is around investing the time and resources to develop a high-end, high-quality bot. And I'm guessing that's where Skyscanner are. And the other approach is about bringing in machine learning so that the bot can draw as much as possible from the wealth of interactions that are already going on. And that is the approach that we're taking in Sogro. So let me leave the tools and the high quality bots and talk about machine learning a bit. Instead of programming the bot, instead of setting out rules and setting out how behaviors, what if the bot learns from you? Now, the first thing we want bots to handle is going to be repetitive tasks, which means that, well, the thing about repetitive tasks is, by definition, you have to do them a lot. So there is repeated training data there for the bot to learn from. Having said that, it is hard, because human communication is hard. There really are a billion ways of phrasing anything, and people will find them. And if you try and solve the general problem of learning from example to deliver an NLP bot, you end up with the problem that Cortana had, that it's too hard for the technology we have at the moment. But that's the general problem. If we frame the problem so that what we're solving is something quite specific, and we focus the types of conversation that the bot can have and the types of interaction it can have, then what we can create is a space where it's much more tractable for the bot to deliver something. So these aren't bots they're not trying to be as intelligent as people. They're trying to do one thing well. And at this point, I am going to show you a couple of bots that I've been involved in building. And let's start with the very first bot I built. This is probably from 2009, I think. That is a small blue toy called Honker. And if anyone knows the comedian Adam Hills, he plays the Edinburgh Festival quite regularly, and often raises money for the Sick Kids Hospital. And in 2009, he had found this toy, and he was using this as his focus for fundraising. And we built a a social media bot that was the voice of Honker, the small blue alien. And all this bot would do is, if someone happened to mention it, it would retweet them and say honk. That is the sum total of actions that bot would perform. Honk, retweet. So comparing that against my sins, was Honker sincere? Yes. When it said honk, it meant it. And as someone receiving that tweet, you understood what you were getting was what you saw was what you got. There was no deception of the audience in it. Was it? Did it obey etiquette? Well, it only talked to people who you had to mention it before it would come into the conversation, so it was not intrusive. It was respectful of etiquette. Was it useful? There, maybe it falls down. But it did help run this campaign. The campaign was very successful. We raised £6,000 over a space of 3 weeks and finished with a series of completely sold out gigs that were added just at the last minute around the Honk for Honker gigs. So it did fulfill a purpose. That's a very simple bot, and I think there's something in that from, there is a space for simple bots doing simple things. On to Sogro, which is a slightly more sophisticated bot. Sogro is a robot intern for social media. You tell Sogro about your company and your target audience, and it then finds relevant news for you to share on social media. And it will also find people who fit, with your topics and with the sort of person you're looking to connect to. And it will do the Twitter equivalent of batting eyelashes at them, of maybe follow them, or if they make a relevant tweet, it might like it. And what this does is it lays down a kind of basic level of social media activity which helps keep your brand active on social media. It's by no means a replacement for a proper marketing strategy, but it is going to build you a bit of focused community and keep your activity there so that you are visible on social media. And let me show you a bit of Sogro. This is its own Twitter page. We can see it retweeting stuff. I'm not online, so a lot of this stuff won't come through. If there's activity going on, here it's talking about internal company news. So if there's stuff going on inside our company, it might post about that. Lots of retweets. This will be, again, stuff going on that it's picking up from either the blog or our internal issue tracker, stuff that's been marked, and it's created tweets out of that. And it's also followed some people. And that's a completely automated system. We have it running. We have a few corporate profiles that we use on social media, and they are now run by our bots. And this system, here's the setup of the current version. And when we were building it, we figured that really simplifying the process was core to getting bots out there. Though if it was a complex process that required a lot of training, this just wasn't going to work for the SME market. So the Sogro setup is, it takes about 10-15 minutes, and it asks you a series of questions about you, about your company, about your audience. It will do things like take your website, and then it will grab that and do some analysis of that for what kind of topics do you talk on as well. To get the setup down to about 10-15 minutes, we firstly focused what it was going to do, we simplified it, and I must confess we also dumbed it down a bit in that we removed this grew out of some Sodash work. We removed some of the feedback and learning loops that Sodash has. And we are now launching, well, end of September we will be launching version 2 of this, which I can show you mock-up of now. And what we've done in version 2 is to add back in the feedback loops. So what SoGrow version 2 does is to make suggestions to you of what it would like to do. And you as a human can vet these. And as you do so, it will be training the AI behind it as to what you consider to be on topic, focused, what you approve of, what you don't. And this will also, actually this isn't connected, this is, so this will pretend it works. And this system allows the user to be always checking and training the system. And then when they're comfortable, once the system's reached a sufficient level of confidence, it will post a message for you going, I am now 90% confident I can predict these things correctly. Do you want me to do some automatically? And so you switch on the automation only at the point that you've hit a level of confidence. So the workflow here is, it starts off as a streamlining tool that's suggesting stuff to you, but you, the human, are completely in control. And then as it gains confidence, and as you gain confidence in it, it then asks you for more leeway to take the reins off and let it do its own thing. And that's coming out end of September. So it's a bit of a shame about the timing of this talk, because I wanted to say to everyone, sign up! But please hold that sort of sign up for about a month and then sign up. Right. That is basically everything I wanted to show you. So, thank you very much for listening. Next time I do this talk, maybe it will be the bot that does it. And according to Simon's rule, if you have questions, hold on to them and ask me in a minute.
Round of applause.
Right.
Now, you're definitely not a chatbot. You are an actual real human being. You're not trying to fool us. Are you
Genuine
sure?
stupidity.
Can I poke you? Yeah, you feel pretty human to me. Okay, good. Fanta, thank you so much, Daniel. That was really interesting.
Thank you, Simon.
Guys, would you like to take a comfort break? Maybe get some fresh air. Now, we have one restroom over there. There are others, though, if you go through to reception. Now, I don't know if we can actually get access to the building because I haven't attempted to get through the doors. But someone brave enough to go maybe and check and find out if there's a way? Or we have to wait and wedge the door open, and then there are restrooms through there on the left. So they're locked, closed, are they? So, okay. That's... There's a what? Oh yeah, well that's an option. Wasn't there a security guard, Tim, who told you off for drinking booze in the hallway because you're waiting for when we were in another room, weren't we? You had a nice little comfy chair. You were chugging on a cider or a beer, eating Doritos, and he came out of his little hut there. Do you think we might be able to grab his attention? Possibly. Where was he? Where was he hiding? Okay, well, I think someone should attempt to try to... otherwise, like I said, there is just one loo there. Drinks, cold drinks, on ice, yellow bucket. Let's just take a little break, and then we'll come back for Stefan's talk, Sky Scanner. Don't tell me it's chatbots. Great. Okay, fantastic, guys. Let's take a 5-minute break.
apply machine learning to that?
Okay, let's get some seats.
Some of them Foxtrot Oscar.
Now, Stefan, you work for a little startup-y thing, don't you?
Yeah.
What's it called? Skyscanner? Yeah, I've heard of you
yeah.
guys.
Is this even working? Okay. Well,
What is what working?
mic.
Oh, the mic. You are being recorded.
Okay.
That mic is connected.
Oh, good.
But I just daren't switch the AV audio system on again because we might get attacked by noise again. It was a horrible, horrible experience that I don't want to repeat. But have you guys been able to hear clearly at the back? Because I was standing at the back, and I was able to. Yeah, the audio was.
Okay. Right. Just speak,
Yeah,
a
speak
bit
louder.
Okay, that's perfectly fine. No worries.
So, would you like to start with introducing yourself?
Right. Yeah.
There's Stefan from Skyscanner, and you can do the rest. Okay, round of applause.
Thank you.
Well,
Yeah, so my name is Stefan and I'm a product manager at Skyscanner. I've gone through pretty much the whole journey. I've been a developer, I've been an analyst, or if you like to get paid more, if you do stats on the Mac, also known as data scientist. And I ended up in product just about a year ago, and I've been doing bots for about 6 months. So I'm just going to talk about our year of bots and what we've learned and what we're going to do next. So yeah, without further ado, or probably most of you here know a fair bit about Skyscanner, but I'm just going to go through the top facts. So it's founded in 2003. We've got, I think, roughly more than 770 employees, comprised of 15 nationalities and 10 offices around the world. And in terms of the stats, we've got about 50 million UMVs and 40 million downloads as well. So yeah, moving on from that, and I'm just going to start with this thought from Suman Debroy. So if apps were in the business of selling us distraction, bots will be in the business of buying us time. So far, just a question actually, how many apps have you downloaded in the last month or in the last 2 months, and not counting Pokemon Go? A few, okay. But I think the correct stats were over 70% of people actually haven't downloaded any new apps. So everyone's got messaging applications on the phones, but no one's downloading any new apps anymore. So the way forward, it seems now, to attract more people and get new customers is actually to create an interface via a messaging application. So if we look at it, why? So here, you've got roughly around 9 steps to ask for flights from a particular airline in a very good app. Some are much worse. If you'd like to do it in a conversational way, all you have to do is say this. So get me a BA flight or whatever flight from one place to another, leaving tomorrow morning for less than 100 euros. So all of these 9 steps that you had to do before have now just been concentrated in a single sentence. So yeah, and it's quite a big paradigm shift, but to be fair, looking at my sister, she doesn't leave Messenger pretty much. Last time I counted, in the space of about 3 hours, she was on her phone for about 2 hours and 55 minutes, and that 5 minutes was just spent to get some water and return to the phone. So it seems that a lot of people do get messaging, and messaging is used a lot. So bringing businesses onto these platforms is definitely the way to go forward. So where did we start? Probably not a lot of you will know, but our first double in kind of conversation as a platform was with Telegram, which were the first guys to actually open up a API and a bot platform before anyone else. And that was, I think, just over a year ago. So that was a hack day by one of our architects, Richard. And in the space of a few days, he managed to hack up a hotels bot that you could chat to with the / commands in Telegram. So yeah, you can see, try searching for hotels. Where would you like to stay? In this particular case, I think it was Brighton. And yeah, specify when, and you're done. It gives you recommendations, and it's asynchronous as well, so you don't have to do that all the time. The conversation will just go on. So if the bot is searching for prices, you don't have to just sit there and wait. You can go off, do something else. You've already got the notification. It's in a single thread. It's all there. So the next thing we moved on to, and I think this is not really going to work without the audio, but fantastic! I forgot about this as well. So yeah, it's Alexa, And I don't know if any of you have seen the video. It's just the Alexa stick and the most famous the most famous elbow and Skyscanner of David Lowe. So the way Alexa worked, it's you all familiar with Alexa? Just, yeah, most of you. So it's just a platform from Amazon, the Echo, that you can hook up all sorts of interesting stuff to. So some of the things we've used are you can check your bank account balance. You can play music hooked up to your Amazon account. You can also control the lighting in the room, I think the temperature and all sorts of other stuff. So we also added flight search as well. And yeah, probably should have checked that a bit earlier. Apologies for that. And Alexa was the second one. But the problem was, right, brilliant. Okay. So each one of those was kind of a bespoke integration. So it was one monolithic thing built for that particular use case. So Telegram was a single script. Alexa was just a Node.js application deployed on a Lambda. And none of these things really talk to each other or were built in a way that you could scale out easily. So what we decided to do is kind of hold a hack day and go back to the drawing board. And instead of doing one single integration for each one of those individual platforms, we decided to create essentially a conversation service that would power all of those interfaces with varying degrees of various degrees of complexity. So for most of the interfaces, it was just going to be, as with Facebook, it was just going to be the different carousels, because obviously those are going to be different in Telegram, they're going to be different in Alexa because that's voice, and in Facebook and Skype, you're just going to have different things. So, but the next one we did when kind of I came in just around F8 is we took a team, dropped everything else, and we just decided we're going to do this properly. We're going to start with a service, and we're just going to launch the first travel bot for Facebook Messenger, which we managed to do in about 42 days from scratch. So it wasn't a hack that we just decided to do from today and fix all the technical debt tomorrow. It was done in a decent way, and we started fairly simple. So at the beginning, it was a fairly transactional bot, so you couldn't do absolutely everything. You would just come into the bot and we'll say, hey, where would you like to go? I'd like to go to London. So it'll guide you through the whole process that you'd normally have on a website, which is origin, destination, outbound date, and inbound date. And you go through the whole flow. And as you can see there, you just see the prices, and then you can go off to the website and book if you'd like, or you can change them. So with Facebook, we had the first kind of bigger app, the first bigger bot, but it was just one-to-one. So the way Facebook promised some of it is you're going to have all of these things, and then suddenly, you're just going to be able to do a one-to-one conversation with the bot, which isn't perfect because travel is inherently a social activity. I mean, a lot of people travel solo, and that's perfectly fine, but a lot of us will travel either with our partners or with our family or with just friends. So what happened afterwards is we sat down with Skype and we decided to build a bot that could be used in groups as well. So here you can see a couple of people. So I think one of them is me, and the technical lead on the bots team is just going through a simple conversation, and both of us using the bot together, and the bot kind of interacts nicely with the two of us without any hiccups. So group travel was quite an interesting thing, and contrary to our expectations, Facebook was a very overhyped launch. So it was F8, people were building bots, then all the bots, even actually some of the ones who were demoed on stage, like ShopSpring, the one about shoes that David Marcus used, that was brought down 2 days later because it was too spammy and people were just blocking it like crazy. And yeah, it's just launching this one, which was a much nicer experience, can be done in a group, meant that people actually use it more. So as I said, contrary to our expectations, Facebook isn't quite as popular as Skype. The fact that we're due to our good relationship with them probably helps as well, but people do use it in a group quite a bit, which is awesome. So kind of our thoughts on messaging and why it's suddenly become so successful, even though IRC bots have been around for around for 20 years, is the fact that you don't have to download anything and you don't have to install anything. So you can just use a lot of bots over text, and a lot of people do that. So it's asynchronous, both in the way you deliver the information and in the speed communication style, so people can just chat to the bot in their own way. It doesn't require any kind of pre-agreed things. You just ask a question, people will answer, and then you'll guide them through the whole conversation. So it's got very low data usage, and it's a very good network. Well, it's got excellent intermittent network behavior. So in some parts of Africa, actually it costs, so I think for a fairly chunky app, which is about 20 or 30 megabytes, in Africa it costs about $60 to download an application, while if you just do it over text or over a bot, it's much easier to expand into kind of new audiences as well. So the bots are inherently social, and they work for one-on-one, which is the one we launched first with Telegram, Alexa, and then also Facebook was one-on-one as well. One to N, where you've got one bot and multiple people chatting to it, which is where Skype is at the moment. And what would be the most awesome thing would be an end-to-end scenario where we have, let's say, 2 or 3 different bots all chatting with a group of people, where we say, oh, we'd all like to go here. Some people will be starting from one place, some people will be starting from another, all going to the same place, all needing a hotel, but then they wonder whether it's a good time to book. And we've all got the kind of different bits and pieces together, but most platforms still don't allow communication in between bots, which is a bit weird, but I don't know. I mean, I guess they think that, you know, bots will just take over the world, but seeing most of them, it's far from possible. The other really good thing is it's got persistent context, so you always know a certain bit about a user. So for most of the people that have used it, we can probably infer what their home airport is or roughly where they live. The frustrating thing with all the platforms is that none of them actually provides a decent way to localize a user, which provides many problems for localization and just actually being a bit more useful, where people can say, I want to go to X, and we already know 1 bit, and we can just kind of go through the whole floor much quicker. But alas, they don't do that yet, and I don't think they probably will for a while. All bots are cross-device and cross-platform, so ours, it's essentially the same thing sitting underneath, but you can find it on Alexa, you can find it on Facebook, and you can find it on Skype, and it's the same thing. And also, if you use text or just actually any messaging application, it will work much better on feature phones if you've got text and on low-end smartphones as well, which most applications don't really do nowadays, because most of them are over 100 megabytes, which is absolutely insane. So what have we learned? And here I'm going to be as frank as possible, and if you want to build a bot, test it a lot. And when we built the Facebook one and the whole service underneath, it took us probably about 20 days to get from A to B. So it did the job, and it did it fairly well. However, people will try to break your bot, and they'll try to do it a lot by doing all sorts of random things. So one guy, the weirdest example we've seen was one guy who performed the whole search, and it was perfectly fine, and then he just suddenly asked the question, which side are you on? And then he went on to like one massive novel asking like, which side is the bot on when the war between the humans and the bots erupts? And it just went on and on and on. I thought of doing a printout of it on the screen, but then privacy issues probably wouldn't be too bad. But it's fantastic when you see it. I think it was about 1,000 words. Like, the guy would just go on and on. It's amazing. So yeah, sometimes people will just want to chat as well, and that's perfectly fine. Other people would use the bot in ways you didn't really expect it to. So one guy, I think, even without announcing the whole, because we started out with a kind of small question and answer model where we would just go through and fill kind of all the different stages in order to complete a flight search. As soon as we released complex queries, one guy instantly found a holiday in January, and it should we'd like to be quite soon. So hopefully with the further improvements, we'll get basically people who can happy travelers, which you can just ask the bot for what they want, and it will give them a kind of nice and concise answer that they can actually use. And I think that's pretty much me. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Right. Okay, we're going to do the panel Q&A. So we're going to get some seats up here. We're going to get some lights up so we don't fall asleep. And not that we would have fallen asleep after Stefan's excellent talk rather. Also, don't forget, this is the Internet of Things meetup. It's not just like to open the conversation up a little bit to talk about how these cute little things we call chat box, when they start becoming a lot more sophisticated, how they may be utilized when embedded into things, connected smart products. And what, are we going to be speaking to the consoles of our autonomous driverless cars? Are we going to be speaking to objects in our homes and having a weird kind of conversation? Ethically, is it right that so few companies should be hoarding and have access to so much of our personal data? And right now, this data is reasonably personal. I'm talking perhaps Alexa, which, who's heard of Alexa, Amazon Alexa, the home hub, right? All the big consumer electronics companies are jumping on that bandwagon because they realize the importance of getting their platform into our homes, and as an opportunity to aggregate our personal data to essentially leverage, exploit, and use to make their AI smarter and better. So even this week, I think Samsung jumped in and said that they're entering the market with a similar kind of product to Alexa. Of course, we've got Google Home. Personally, I don't think it's the right approach to have this kind of object sitting in the middle of the kitchen. Seems bizarre to me. It's a sort of a shared hub with other members of the family. You actually want to have AI that's personal to you. But the kind of fine-grained data these companies are accumulating about us, just wait until we've got embeddable medical information. We are going to be hemorrhaging data, very, very personal data. And if we want the utility of AI to help us seamlessly run our lives, are we going to be sharing that information? Are we going to be comfortable with that? With these organizations? So the data issue when it comes to AI, I think, is an interesting topic. Have a seat. I think we'll just have a quick targeted Q&A relating to the talks that have just taken place. And then, like I said, I would like to open it up to a more kind of IoT specific conversation. Now, in terms of the microphones, I've been instructed by Alan to make sure that microphone, yeah, we're all within range of a microphone. So Stefan, okay. You've de-mic'd, you bad person. You're not done yet. No, that's fine, exactly. As long as it's, there we go, we're not sitting next to each other, apparently. It's all good. So, questions? Sure. Okay. Just make sure we're all in range. Okay. Okay. So, questions from the audience? Go for it.
My question, there was a news article recently about autonomous cars and the fact that they were potentially going to become legal entities from the perspective of requiring insurance for liability purposes. What about bots?
What's that?
What about bots? What's the liability on a bot giving poor advice?
Are you guys legal experts in this particular area? Okay, disclaimer. You don't have an actual legal opinion.
I don't think there's a legal opinion for that matter. It's almost garbage, and it also depends on making sure that what would not say something that it doesn't need to, or doesn't need to. Goes back to the whole point of, like, rather than try to build Google as a bot, just build the areas that you are kind of know and familiarized with, and putting the hand up and say, no, I'm not going to answer, is a far better place to be rather than will be. I mean, I have this thing I always say, like if NHS 111 adopt a bot, that will be the ideal place for a bot, in a sense. But that is never going to happen because going back to the same thing. So, would you trust?
Can I just jump in real quick? Who was at the Shelter hackathon, which took place a few weeks ago? Okay, were you there as well? You know the Shelter.
Wasn't for the hackathon.
Okay, and one of the guys was actually participating. You built a bot, right? And what the principal idea behind that was that when you have perhaps vulnerable people needing immediate location-specific advice about where they can find a safe place to lodge that evening, Shelter as a charity, have a remit to offer advice in certain parameters. And we discussed. I wasn't one of the judges. Disclaimer. I was just one of the attendees. But on one side, you do. You feel attracted to the prospect of having a bot interact with those end users and provide them with a lot of routine information. Where's your location? You don't have to give me the location, but if you give me your location, your gender, and your requirements, as a chatbot, I can provide you with information. And the question, of course, was, what happens if that particular person goes on to do something irresponsible, shall we say? As a result, perhaps they're in a fragile mental state, and the chatbot goes off, what should we say, kind of off script, and says something a little bit, curt, cold, not perhaps what they want to hear at that particular time. And maybe they think they're speaking to a human being, and because they're not, they're speaking to a bot, they're getting this kind of, and that could lead to some very bad things happening. So that was a liability concern, and as a result, they were like, yeah, we're just not going to put our end users interacting with the bot in that context. It's just not going to happen. Now, if something did happen, what would be the liability? Who would be responsible? Would it be the charity, the developer of the bot? Would it be, the end user for choosing to speak to the bot? I mean, are there any lawyers in the audience that can advise on this particular subject?
Not being a lawyer, but I'm going to hazard a guess. You are a lawyer?
I have a law degree.
Oh, that'll do.
I have no bloody clue.
Okay.
Can you act as an agent?
Well, drones, autonomous drones,
so
autonomous
I
aerial vehicles.
I work in defence and intelligence, and have done for the last 25, 26 years. And I was presenting at Oxford last year at a conference called Drones and Killer Robots. So you can, that was the tone of the conference, and there's lots of stuff like that. Who's liable when a robot kills a person?
Because drones are possibly already autonomous, right? They're completely autonomous.
Notwithstanding the emotive stuff behind it, I just wonder if we're applying an old model to a new issue, and actually we should be starting to think in a new way about liability when it comes to this type of thing, because law is a social process.
Sure.
These things are changing social processes, and therefore laws should change with them. So I think if we view liability through the current lens on a future issue, we're probably as doomed as people who viewed gay marriage through a certain lens a couple of years ago and then view it through a lens.
So you feel there may actually be prejudice, social prejudice against AI?
Yeah,
the people, there is a terminology for them, right? They're just very anti industrial progression and technology in general. No, I don't know if there's a lot. Anyone? There's actually a technical term for people who don't want to see AI continue. Sorry? Or Google it, or Bing it. Take your preference.
You've just got to ask yourself, when is a bot a bot? I mean, at the minute...
When it becomes self-aware.
Well, that is the test, isn't it? I mean, at the minute we've got people whose lives depend on technology. If you're diabetic and you've got a continuous glucose monitor and an insulin pump, that's doing, in an automated way, what you maybe used to do with injections, and so the computer is actually managing your health. It could give you an overdose.
Your life, potentially?
Right? It could give you an overdose, but it's been certified and tested So a bot is simply another piece of equipment or machinery.
Yeah, but I
that
think
needs
it's a
to be
what-if
tested appropriately.
scenario.
So you need to understand
If
the
it
boundary
failed, if
between
it-
something like that is already out there,
Yeah.
and what's different with what you're doing now.
Well, we're
rather
talking about
than-
industrial
That's a good way of
assets.
looking at it, this
You know.
lens of it's not a true false.
Yeah.
There are bots, there is other.
It's a
There are
spectrum.
degrees of
And
machine
there must be some sort of
mechanisation.
crossing point of it is capable of making its own decisions, but it's really just making.
Great
decisions.
question, by the way. Great topic. Loving
Yeah.
it. Let's move on. Sorry,
I was
Daniel,
gonna
you
say,
respond, and then
capable
we'll.
of making its own decisions
then-
might be capable of testing. Might be the more interesting tech.
Capable of self-learning.
Because some things we can test, and some things when we your insulin machine is capable of being very thoroughly tested, whereas a lot of the bots we build are much less capable of being properly tested, and that's where they become.
You've heard the phrase first world problems. That's what you're talking about there. This isn't about liability. Globally, given the cost, if you've got a medical bot backed up by a medical expert system, that's going to provide a greater utility to the vast majority of the world connected by smartphones than any problems that are going to arise from liability.
Like a
Well,
prognosis, diagnosis type medical
yeah, I mean,
bot.
medical is just one example.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
What that will bring to the lives of poor people is so much greater.
Yeah, but what if it misdiagnoses? I
But
think
it
is the
will.
risk
And-
versus impact scenario.
I mean,
He's quite right. It will misdiagnose. It will do bad things, but the good it does will outweigh that. Because the people who are getting no diagnosis, no medical
There are,
support,
there are
and therefore
Teslas
dying for
crashing,
lack
and they've
of
got a
bot.
standard, haven't they, which is 1/10 of human accident rates is the point at which Musk has said he will let it rip. And we're going to get the same thing in every field, really. Of course,
Nothing's just-
bots will kill people.
Well, the question about liability
less.
was more to do with the matter of insurance. It's like, the company makes 10 million, you have an accident that costs you 1 million. It's like, who coughs up for that?
Which is why I said first world problems, because those concerns.
Well, that very well may be the case. Yes, first world problems, because the developed world, will tend to adopt those technologies. There's been a very rapid progression where it looks like every Uber driver is going to get his P45 sent to him very soon as they transition more quickly than anyone expected into driverless cars. And then these cars could potentially become completely self-regulating autonomous vehicles that use the blockchain for sending and receiving payments. When they need to be serviced, they'll use earnings from virtual cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, to pay for the service and fuel, and they will be completely self-managing. Now, what happens? Okay, the Uber scenario that would fall under, of course, the remit of Uber, but there could well be in future vehicles on the road that don't actually belong to anyone. They're just roaming the streets, collecting fares, self-managing their own bank accounts, paying with cryptocurrency. What happens if they run into someone? Well, there's a fatality. No one's actually in charge of these autonomous vehicles. I mean, projecting quite far out into the future, I might add. But theoretically, that's where it's headed. Sorry, go ahead.
Fair enough. I thought about that. So I wrote a little memo on what autonomous cars could do, and it's kind of I haven't got my iPod with me, but I've got this one as well. The thing is, autonomous cars can be controlled by a database, which can be transmitted via internet.
No, sure, but
can
what
be
happens when it's
controlled.
decentralized, this autonomous machine entity? That's where things are heading, there's no question. We're going to be covering that in a future meetup. We're going to be covering blockchain, autonomous distributed organizations where the organizations have no geographic boundary. So how do you prosecute these organizations? We're talking about Ethereum, so the shareholders' identities completely encrypted, so you don't know who's actually behind the organizations.
I guess
I-
law would be always behind the technology at some stage, but
Sure.
at some point it will catch up, and then the
I
law
don't think
would
it
change
will.
or
I'm not
something.
sure that it will ever catch up. The speed now of innovation is so rapid that I think, you look at corporations, they're not really these days being, and that, okay, going off on a little, why do you think, a lot of these multi-billionaires are so keen on colonizing space and the moon? Because there's no legal jurisdiction up there. And as soon as they start setting up, tax-free, domains for organizations that are registered on the moon, how governments don't, it's out of their jurisdiction. That's going to be an interesting one.
So the non-ethical answer for the question of who's liable. So the satnavs has been there for like I don't know how many years now. Every satnav still has a disclaimer that says use at your own risk. So I mean, for a technology which for GPS and everything which has been developed and tested for 20, 30 years ago, still there's a big disclaimer that says we are giving you the data. It's up to you to make sure that you use it and do it, and we don't have anything to do if you do that. So that is an unethical part of the, if you're thinking of how chatbot's going to change the behavior. So easiest
I'm not sure
example.
that will stand up though. I think the courts might look on a faulty sat nav and say no, that disclaimer doesn't hold. You can't just print it and say, well, you're bound by it.
It's quite similar to the way that it works with medical consent as well. There's a sort of concept of informed consent, that a doctor would have to warn you of the risks of surgery before, if you are, if something goes wrong during your surgery, the information you receive before is sort of their disclaimer towards you. So it's quite a similar thing. For me, what I find interesting is the prospect that we have to revisit a lot of ethical questions that we've left open for a long time. With a fully autonomous car, we talk about these ethical problems like, there's that classical problem of people on rail tracks, and it's sort of like the train runs into 5 people, or you pull the lever and it runs into one person. And cars are having to deal with problems like that now. If we're talking about these sorts of things, there will be situations where you're damned either way, and we have to start saying which is the better of them. And for a long time we've been able to avoid those sorts of questions, or we can sort of think we can just go with human error, that in a situation where someone had 2 impossible choices, they took one over the other, and there's not really, it's hard to blame them either way because it was an impossible decision. Whereas now we're having to revisit that and say, well, what would we do? So
Okay, can we move on now from the moral stroke legal implications and just sort of think about perhaps how chatbots and AI embedded within smart devices will either change or improve our lives, and autonomous vehicles, smart homes and so on, smart cities. Will you just go up to a lamppost and have a conversation with it? Theoretically. Hi, how are you today? Go for it, Will.
Yeah, hi. So first, thanks very much for some interesting chats. I really appreciate your time. It kind of links into that. It's maybe a couple of observations that lead into a couple of questions. The first one is, as you were talking, and as this conversation just gone on, having been an assistant to a very senior, busy chap, and having had assistants and people work for me in the past, sometimes it's not more efficient, sometimes it's less efficient to have an assistant, and it can be a real pain, and you have to invest in them. And sometimes, I thought one of my biggest jobs when I was an assistant was to be better than not having an assistant. And then the second observation, or thing that leapt into my mind from these conversations, was the fact that in the litigation thing, we kind of anthropomorphise bots, and we talk a lot about the singularity and the Turing test and stuff like that. But bots are essentially a service, and it reminded me actually of in a restaurant. I was in Berlin last weekend and went to quite a few restaurants, and sometimes I had an engaging waiter, sometimes I had a waiter who was very, Teutonic and stern and efficient. But actually, listening to the conversations, it sort of struck me, all I really want from my waiter is my food, the food that I ordered on time and delivered easily. If they're engaging, that's very nice, but actually I haven't come out.
Yeah, but there are other people who don't feel the same way. They go to their local and they want an experience beyond just the food.
So I guess the two
they want companionship.
The 2 questions I would have are, firstly, why do we want our interactions with a bot to be like an interaction with a human? Or should we have, is that based on what we currently see assistants as, or should we have a mindset change in the future that we don't necessarily want that kind of relationship with a bot or a service? And then the second question I was going to have was, why would having a robotic assistant be any more or less efficient than having a human assistant?
So on the first one, I'll just jump in. In terms of actually where do you thread the line in between being very human-like or very robotic-like? So initially we started out being very jokey, very informal, and very just personable, I suppose you could say. And that actually backfired massively, because when we were doing the internal test, people expected the bot to behave in a, well, much more humane way. So they kind of would shoot off a random thing and then they would expect the bot to pick it all up. So as we toned down the dialogue a bit, where we made it in between formal and in between chatty, it kind of struck the right balance, because then you're setting the expectations, you're not talking to a human. This is essentially a service of some sort. And also it's not too kind of terse, where it's like, what do you want? This, cool, what's next? So it's, I'd say in the balance at the moment, it's probably the best way to go. But when NLP becomes better, you can probably move towards the more kind of personified way. But for now, you'll just piss people off massively if you behave.
Yeah, that's kind of where the sentiments would come in. Like, so if your bot can understand what's the way that people type, and if somebody's using more exclamation marks, that means, well, you don't want to joke with him, you just need to actually get the work done, sort of thing. So that's where the sentiment analysis is a big thing in NLP, which is being worked on currently as well. So when that is actually hits, well, maybe come to about 70-80% accuracy rate, then you would see bots. The single bot, based on who is typing, would actually adapt different personas on how they are communicating with the users.
Can I just ask the audience a real quick question? In terms of an Alexa type device that's constantly on, constantly connected, constantly listening, okay, so that you don't have to press the microphone icon, you just say, Alexa, what's the weather like? Or Google now, Google, okay, Google, whatever. Is that considered creepy or helpful? And is there a preference in terms of the type of corporation who is hoarding and processing that information? Do you see that any different from government harvesting information? Would you trust a corporation more than a government, or vice versa, or the same? How do generally, what's our view on this wholesale collection of our increasingly personal data in order to deliver through AI a more seamless service to us? What do we feel about that?
Empirically, we trust corporations more than governments, because there are fewer protests against mass surveillance by commercial entities than there are by government entities.
Yeah, but I suspect quite generally Amazon know a heck of a lot more about me than the government do. Yeah. And certainly Google. I mean, Google knows everything about me, from my location, my whereabouts, my calendar. I mean, that's the beauty. Everything is so seamlessly stitched together. I love that utility, but it scares the heck out of me, kind of. It doesn't scare me. I don't know how I feel about it. I'm ambivalent.
Powerful and could be abused. So,
but how? Give us some examples of how this could.
Well, the most obvious one is blackmail.
Pardon?
Blackmail.
If you know enough about people, blackmailing people becomes. Most people have things that they don't want to share in public, be it just slightly embarrassing stuff that could be used for slight blackmail through to more extreme things. That's the most obvious use, that if you have the kind of total surveillance that Google has on a lot of us, it could be misused.
And I have to admit, I assume that everything that I watch, search, and everything is being monitored. Yeah. I've kind of already assumed that. Again, is that acceptable? Is that the boiling frog syndrome, where we're just so gradually become used to it that we think, well, obviously, and now, is there going to be a tipping point, a backlash, where people are going to go, whoa, hold on. I think it's called digital discomfort is the generic term for this point at which people go, okay, enough now, it's just too much. Sorry, you've been, we'll get to you in just 1 second.
Have a digital backlash
If one of these giant corporations were to turn evil,
what could be done? We're so
would you even be able
hooked
to
in.
spread the message if Google didn't want you to spread it?
It's a bit like the 2001 Odyssey. Now you get that computer.
Oh sure, the HAL 9000. Yeah.
How you do?
Of course, that
Yeah,
is.
do, you know, that kind of-
Dave, you are acting irrationally.
Yeah.
Of course.
Actually, is that the interfering?
The dystopic perspective of
Yeah.
AI, absolutely.
Not unless you have a Siri.
And
camera
Skynet,
device,
of course, is the other chestnut.
which has a permission button. Then you can say, "Hello, can you tell me?"
Well, that's what we've got now, you see. You have to
Permission
press
button.
the icon, but a lot of people are now saying that is so antiquated. People who now use in the States, because we haven't got it yet,
Yeah.
Alexa, you're doing your cookery and you don't want to be pressing anything. You just say, Alexa, can you put a timer on for 20 minutes? And they love that because it's so seamless. But the thing is listening, waiting for you to call on her.
The clue behind that is when you say Alexa, that's when it switches on. Now, if you talk normal without saying Alexa, it won't switch on.
But the point is,
How do you know?
it still needs to listen to the word Alexa, so it
Yes,
needs to be
but
24/7
it
on.
will
The
listen, it will
word
listen.
Alexa, it's not that.
Dr. Timothy Willis, do you have something to say?
It does need to send the entire signal down the line to check that you haven't said it. And it needs to speech process the entire stream.
Name Alexa, that switches it on.
But it needs to, does it not need to stream the entire speech stream?
In order to give it
That's
context.
voice processing.
And there was a smart TV, wasn't there, I think?
Samsung then.
Allegedly, Samsung, and the TV, the data was being uploaded allegedly to a Nuance, which is the company behind much of the Siri technology, analyzing constantly. You're thinking, you've got, a monitoring device in the form of a smart TV. Again, a lot of people may well feel that's okay because you're getting so much utility from that service, and others may think, I don't know about that.
And it'd be nice if we could structure our agreements with these kind of companies around what they're going to do with data, which I think the Data Protection Act broadly does but doesn't accomplish, is the idea that you can only collect data for the purpose that...
But again, are you talking about the EU, or are you talking about other jurisdictions? Because the
this would be
EU are
UK.
far more,
Yeah.
I think, vigilant.
Yeah.
In the United States, they tend to be very lackadaisical about freedom of
Then you have the
information.
potential problem. What if your service runs in US? What is your data center and
Yeah.
your servers are in US?
Absolutely. How do you prosecute?
So that's all good that you have the EU
Yeah.
jurisdiction, but I'm sure majority of your services are running in AWS in somewhere in US state. Even the Google servers are.
How do you
pretty much
police
like-
it? How
Yeah,
on
so
earth?
how would-
Absolutely,
I think, to be honest,
absolutely.
in my honest opinion, I think that ship has already sailed on what's how scared that we need to be. On
I
the
disagree
data.
very strongly, absolutely. And I think, like I said, just plugging a future talk, we will be talking about the decentralization of data movement. Just look at Ethereum, for example, and dApps, distributed autonomous apps. There is an alternative, it turns out. But we'll see, we'll see. The central server model, I think, will become broken.
You were talking about the level of data that Google gathers. I mean, if you went into Google Maps and looked at your history, it tells you where you've been, how long you've been there, what the address was, and what mode of transport you took, where you live and where you work, and it can work all that out just from your Maps history. And you're worried about devices being on the whole time. I bet if somebody shouted, "OK, Google," it would be surprising how many phones turned on.
iPhones.
Is the voice actually making any difference at this point, though, or is that just an anthropomorphism? Do we just think actually the data they're collecting at the moment is being collected by
Harvesting on keyboards, perhaps?
It's not really coming from voice, and that the voice, the always on voice interface at the moment is just because it sounds scary, because it's a bit like being how or whatever. But actually, you're not collecting any.
It's a good point. Absolutely. The fact that Gmail's trawling through your emails every day. No, I think it's all the same. But
voice really at the moment is just using it's so narrow focus and the reference is so poor that in reality that actually the data is you ever had a look at the voice history from Google now, rubbish.
Okay, Tim.
Where's your location and search history? That's much easier to find.
Yeah, exactly.
The difference is you know what data you're
If you're typing
broadcasting and
something,
sharing.
you know that it's going into the system, whereas you kind of switch off when you're speaking into these
kind of-
machines, but the whole signal being sent
Absolutely.
down the line to get speech processed.
Yeah.
To look for the word Alexa.
But I don't think you actually do know the data that's being collected about you, because it's not just what you type onto the internet, it's all about your behavioural patterns on the internet and where you move around with your phone. So actually I'm not thinking about what Google are collecting about me. And that's much more powerful than the rubbish speech regulator they've got. I mean, my background is voice, so I understand it. But
What do you do? What's your?
I look after. I work for a company that provides customer contact, and I look after the kind of pre-sales and.
Was it like a sales company?
No, it's kind of like a system integrator.
Okay.
And predominantly in kind of contact center technologies. So traditionally lots of IVR technology, so speech rec from IVR. We're moving more into kind of virtual assistants and the IoT and how they link together for our customers.
Are you allowed to say what the company is?
Yeah, it's called Sabio. It's been around for years and years and years. Yeah, so
Sabio. Sabio. Okay. I mean, does anyone want to share like a good or a particularly bad experience they've had with a chatbot so far? Anyone sort of felt kind of deceived by a chatbot or?
Yeah, so when I go onto websites, there is often the chat icon to go and chat to our thing, and I assume that's a bot, and so I never click on it. What's it going to take for that to change? Because I will just assume that whatever comes out is going to be awful and not relevant to me, and I wouldn't click on a chat icon.
Because the AI is not quite seamless enough, or you've had a bad experience previously, or what?
That'll be a human. So live chat is much more prevalent on the web than chatbots are as a back end to that.
Sure.
So it's actually quite.
But that'll probably change, presumably.
That will change.
Right.
A lot of what we do is sell technology that does that, but at the moment you're getting to a human most of the time to get a decent answer.
80% of the time it will be humans rather than bots actually handling them.
Guys, what have you had in terms of the sentiment? You did touch upon that a little bit, Stefan, in terms of what do people just generally, what's the sentiment towards it? Are they just kind of annoyed, neutral, very happy, very pleased? Generally in terms of, and your clients, not you directly, because you're B2B, but you mentioned some brands on your deck. What kind of feedback are you getting in terms of sentiment from those companies?
Around bots?
Yeah.
So
are they saying, give me more, this is phenomenal, give it, or are they like, let's just see how things go and we're not really getting much feedback yet?
The brands I mentioned in my talk are mostly quite cautious. So they're using us for routing and sometimes drafting replies, but it tends to be that they only go to the bot runs the conversation for quite limited settings.
And are we talking about speaking? Or are we talking about more sort of IM, sort of typing bots?
In Sodash's case, IM is...
it is all only IM, okay. But so far they're fairly neutral, just sort of waiting to see how things progress.
They like bots for the safe cases. And we have these quasi-bots, bots which will draft a reply that it still goes through a human for checking. And those are quite popular.
So that's mixed initiative in a sense, where you've got a human and a bot working in tandem, which seems to be that seems to be the sweet spot. Not just people, not just bots, but that nice integration between the two.
But then, so in our platform, what we see is most things bigger brands rather than like normal people trying to do bots. It's like bigger brands who call us and try to adapt the technology. And one of the main requirements is that we need to see what bot does, and we should be able to jump in and say bot to shut up at any given time, and one of our staff members should be able to pick that communication and link it seamlessly. So that has been the adaptation that we have seen.
You haven't got any examples between you of kind of advocating this is a really good thing that brands love, and more importantly that the end users love, because even if the brands love it, maybe the end users don't. So is it just simply too early? You just don't have enough data? Okay.
Which is, it's not something people love, but it's, we have a couple of companies who will use bots in crisis situations where something abnormal has happened and their normal team just can't cope with the volume of conversations that they're having to hold. So these are travel companies, and it will be some large-scale disruption that is something has affected lots of trains or buses.
Person under a train at Clapham Junction is your example. Seen that a few
Clapham
times.
Junction is the busiest train station in Europe. Did you know that?
Tens of people affected simultaneously.
Insane. The volume of traffic, yeah.
So when there's that sort
I feel
of
your
wall
pain.
of traffic and the team can't cope with it, the bots have been being able to go, okay, we're not just going to ignore people, we can still deliver a level of service here. That's been very well received.
So where a human just is not available, so it's either hold music or a bot delivering actually some form of utility. Yeah, I can see that being hugely beneficial. Have you guys got an example of that scenario?
In our case, it's a bit weird because Facebook was already a pre-existing channel where people could come and contact us. So what happened was we suddenly just put the bot in there, and people were mostly complaining and saying like, oh, something happened, I need some help, and we would help them. So initially we went all bot, 100%, everything routed there, which of course pissed some people off because they would come with a genuine question and then would say, where do you want to go? And then we implemented kind of a dual switch where some people could essentially just press a button and it will be flagged up, and then someone will come have a look at it and it will go off. So we've seen a lot of people alternate between the two, where they would speak to a human and get their stuff sorted out, and then they would just go back and perform a search or do whatever with the bot. So I think having both is quite nice, but then in Skype and all the other stuff, unless you build your own interface at the back, you can't really see it. So you've got the logs and everything, but it's just you can't really react the way you would normally. So
who would prefer to be speaking to a human versus anonymously with a chat bot in terms of something where judgment, something embarrassing maybe, or there's kind of, well, perhaps a little unethical? Would you prefer to actually be acquiring information on a subject knowing that it's a computer that you're interacting with as opposed to a person, a human being?
I think for me, and linking back to some of the stuff I've done on autonomy and defence, is that the question that I prefer to answer is, when does a human start and stop adding value? And that to me is the judgment. So rather, what I prefer is whoever I'm talking to do what I need them to do. And so the question, and if you start to focus it from that perspective, when does a human start and stop adding value, you then start to mitigate some of the more emotional arguments about artificial intelligence and liability and all that kind of stuff. Because hybrid is almost certainly the future, but it's what is hybrid defined as?
Well, you mean mixed initiative, AI and human?
Yeah, so
absolutely.
To me,
it's proven.
To me, it's not a question
to be
of what
the sweet spot.
Because actually, probably everybody prefers it to work. So actually, the question. So the question is, when does somebody start and stop adding value?
Okay, I think we're probably going to end it there. They're going to boot us out within 10 minutes ish. So I think just some brief networking for those that want to hang around, and then possibly a pub. I don't know if anyone's up for that, but I think for now that will end the formal part of the meetup. So a final thank you and round of applause to our speakers. And thank you guys for attending. And like I said, continue the conversation online on the Facebook group, on the meetup group. Email these guys. Continue the conversation, like I said. Thank you, guys. Thank you.